So the government, in a very sneaky fashion, will actually be in control and in charge of all Victorians' details via their car registration, who travels to the city, what time, and how often. Andrews plots new city tax. Rightio, so what we're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is a new tax to be imposed on the public by, of course, the Daniel Andrews Labor government. Now, we all thought that it was bad enough that here in Victoria, we are the most taxed state in the entire country. But the government wants to tax you more simply for the privilege of heading to the CBD, the Central Business District. There's a little explainer video here. Take a look.
Melbourne's gridlock worsens. A congestion tax has been proposed to help ease the squeeze in and around the city. Reid Butler's on the notorious Victoria Street in Carlton. Reid, how would the charges work?
Well, essentially, Pete, you'd have to pay for the privilege of driving into the CBD. Under this proposal, the inner city would be surrounded by an invisible wall. Victoria Street here would form part of the boundary. So imagine you're driving down Rathdown Street here towards the CBD and bang, you would be charged, and then you'd be hit with another fee driving back out again. The drivers we spoke to for this story say it's unfair considering everything is going up at the moment, but the experts believe that this change could have a really big positive impact on roads right across Melbourne, from Ringwood to Craigieburn and Altona.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I just want to talk about the mention that was made in that little presentation in regards to the think tank that conducted the study, the analysis on imposing this new tax and supposedly the effect it will have on traffic flow. All right, so the so-called experts referred to by the reporter are from the Grattan Institute. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this organisation. It says here on their website, all right, so these are their words. It says here, quote, "We are independent, taking the side of the public interest rather than interest groups. We receive no ongoing government funding and reject commissioned work to ensure this independence." All right, so very big on independence. Now, I read this statement, ladies and gentlemen, and what stood out to me the most were two words here: ongoing government funding. All right, sorry, three words: ongoing government funding. We receive no ongoing government funding. So I thought to myself, well, do you receive once-off payments from the government, once-off sort of funding arrangements? Because if the line here said we receive no government funding, I'd think, wow, that's impressive. We receive no ongoing government funding. So what do they receive? Sporadic government funding. So I took a bit of a look into this, ladies and gentlemen, to see, all right, is this institute truly independent? Can they truly stake claim to being independent? And well, that's going to be a matter for you to decide at home. I've got my own thoughts, but let me show you here on their website. Alrighty, so Grattan began with a $15 million endowment from each of the federal and Victorian governments. Alright, so it's a lot of money, $15 million from each, ladies and gentlemen. Yet we've got the Grattan Institute on their same website beating the drum of independence. Seems a little bit fishy, wouldn't you say, ladies and gentlemen? So moving along here, we can see on their website the founding members of the Grattan Institute, the Australian government and the Victoria state government. So I just think that it's a little bit rich for a think tank to be claiming independence whilst actually listing their founding members as both the federal and state government and admitting to receiving tens of millions of dollars in funding from these from the government. So there's a few problems I see here. So first of all, the Victorian state government spends billions of dollars per year on infrastructure, yet congestion is worse than ever. So right here in Victoria, ladies and gentlemen, no surprise, especially since Daniel Andrews' election to Premier more than 8 years ago now. Here in Victoria, we've got the biggest spend on infrastructure per capita, billions of dollars per year, yet congestion is getting worse and worse. So the problems that we have in terms of traffic flow, these problems can be directly attributed to a failure in governance, not a failure by the people. Therefore, it should not be on the people to make up for the government's shortfall in these failures of planning and infrastructure. There should be a different strategy proposed for lowering congestion, but I'm going to get to that. All right, so that's the first problem there. Second, Victoria is already the most taxed state in Australia. Any increases in taxation will only hurt the already struggling middle class. But according to the Daniel Andrews Labor government, they tend to think you can simply cut a rock and draw blood, and that appears to be the strategy that they've decided to employ in this particular situation. Also, what type of cameras will be used? All right, so again, when commuters travel to the CBD, there will be cameras that scan license plates, and from that point, the details of the license plate will be transmitted to some type of central database, and the drivers of each respective vehicle will of course be charged the tax. So I'm just going to read again. What type of cameras will be used? Which company are they provided by? What is the dollar value of the contract? And where will the collected data be held? Did you ever think that? So the government, in a very sneaky fashion, will actually be in control and in charge of all Victorians' details via their car registration, who travels to the city, what time, and how often. So once again, the further centralisation of our data. And I'd like to know if the Victorian state government has conducted any type of statement of compatibility to make sure that the introduction of this arbitrary tax is in line and is compatible with our human rights, our right to privacy. I doubt they have, but if they have, we know that, you know, based on the type of rhetoric we see from the government, that they'll say whatever needs to be said to convey to the public that they're supposedly not encroaching on our privacy, as demonstrated through the health amendment bill that we spoke about on the show last week. So anyway, also, surely there must be an alternative method for reducing congestion, right? There has to be another way, ladies and gentlemen. Getting cars off the streets of Melbourne, surely imposing additional taxes is not the way to do it. And don't expect on receiving any answers from our Transport Minister, our Minister for Infrastructure, Jacinda Allen, because of course her primary job is to say yes to Daniel Andrews. So what can be done? What can be done, ladies and gentlemen? So this is something that I've spoken about a few times on the show. It's nothing new, all right? So I'm not taking credit for this idea. But what I would love to see in Victoria, and I think this will only be possible with a change of government, is the establishment of what's referred to as special taxation zones. All right, so the way it works is a region will be allocated for special taxation conditions. So generally, you're looking at a region out in the countryside, say in regional Victoria, if we're going to use Victoria as an example. So in this region, you've got the implementation of special taxation conditions, which actually enables businesses to, of course, keep more of what they earn, keep more of their profits, reinvest their profits back into their business, hire more staff. And these special taxation zones have an uncanny way of attracting investment, both domestically and foreign. Very, very common strategy used in the United States, in Japan, and also Europe. A lot of the major economies in the world use these special taxation zones as a way of instigating economic growth in areas where economic growth is needed, right? And in our case, such as regional Victoria, could certainly do well with the economic growth. So some of the other benefits of these setting up these taxation zones is, of course, the lessening of congestion in the city and in the suburban areas, say within metropolitan Melbourne. So as special taxation conditions are granted to regional areas, you will find people in the city moving out to the country in pursuit of capitalizing from those special taxation conditions, whether it's in pursuit of a new job, a better paying job, or setting up a business. And of course, since the setting up of such zones reduces cars on the road, what else does it reduce? The need for the constant building of infrastructure. All right, so if you live in Melbourne, you'll know that any time you get in your car and you drive around the city or around the suburbs, constant roadworks, constant delays. So what we want to do is incentivize people in the city to move to the country, right, by providing tax incentives, and that would also reduce the need for spending such huge amounts of taxpayer money on infrastructure projects. So put your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about that idea, special taxation zones? It's not coming up with anything new. This is a proven method that works all around the world for countries that implement it. I think one thing the government here in Australia does a particularly poor job of is looking overseas, looking to what works and adopting what works into Australia. So, you know, we don't want to see these never-ending infrastructure builds in Melbourne. We don't want to see the implementation of taxes. What we want to see, of course, is the incentivisation of people in the city to move out to the country. And we want to see some policies that instigate major economic growth in regional areas. And that, I think, will improve the quality of life for everyone. And that's the type of thinking that I say that we need in our country. Thank you for watching. To make sure you never miss an episode, sign up at mcjreport.com. Catch you on the next one.